thanks everybody for showing up and coming over here. The reason why everybody's here is because we recognize that there's a huge crisis in our community and in our city, but not just in the city, but in the Commonwealth and the entire country. This is an issue that I'm sure, if we went around this room, just about everybody here would have a story about either somebody that they know personally in their family, a friend of a friend, who is affected by this issue. And we recognize that it's not just the people who are, dealing with the opioid crisis, who are, addicted to these insidious drugs, but it's also the family members and the friends who, in the wake of it, just get smashed to bits, right? And the reason why we're coming here, and other events like this is because we want to do something about it, right? Obviously what's happening now isn't working. We need more collaboration with private individuals, groups, and government coming together to recognize what needs to be done, what is working, and all of that. And we can't just accept the status quo of, and the person, that I think, has the best message and the best ideas to tackle this issue is this guy right here, Mayor Warren. So just to kind of be very, very quick. So I first heard him speak at the Democratic National, the state convention up in a little last year. Can you guys hear me? Right.
Worcester.
All right. Worcester, sorry. Worcester, they changed location, thank you. And he spoke with such passion and energy that it just, I instantly, latched onto his message. And then I listened more and more about what he's all about. And I think he's somebody who definitely wants to jump in with both feet and tackle these huge issues that many of us think are just, we can't do anything about it anymore, So without further ado,
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very, very much for being here to enter into a conversation with me about a crisis that has been growing for many, many years, not just within the last 3 years, but many, many years in our cities and towns in the Commonwealth. I want to tell you first why I'm here, why I made the decision to start a series of town halls and discussions around opioid addiction around the Commonwealth. And then I want to really hear from you, because that's why I'm here this afternoon. So why did I start this conversation across the state? Many of us who are in elected office at the local level, those of us, and I see the deputy chief here, those of us who are closest to the ground in our communities know that this crisis has been growing. And we know that we need to do more. As I started to enter this campaign, and obviously as a mayor I saw overdoses and addiction in my own community, I started moving around our Commonwealth over the last 6 or 7 months. I've been to over 150 communities since I started this campaign. There has not been one city or town or setting that I've been to where someone hasn't publicly or privately raised the issue of opioid addiction in our state and asked me what I'm going to do about it. This is in the entire state. So what I decided to do was take a look at the data and the numbers about 2 months ago. And what I found was pretty remarkable. In 2014, Deval Patrick declared a state of emergency around opioid addiction. Since that time, 6,000 people have died of opioid addiction in the Commonwealth. Over 5 people are dying a day in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, in our state. Over 250,000 people are living with addiction, and that number is growing. Daily, 70 people become addicted to opioids, daily, in our state. And there are 50 non-fatal overdoses daily in our state. This is a crisis that needs attention and intervention. Look, I appreciate some of the legislation and work that's been done on Beacon Hill, but I don't believe it's enough. I appreciate the work that's been done at the community level. I've been to over 8 communities. This is the 8th community I've been to. And there are a lot of people, clinicians, people in recovery, people in law enforcement that are doing everything they can to prevent and educate and treat. But what I also know is at the state level, we're not doing enough. I'm hearing from people, not enough beds. If there are enough beds, the stay isn't long enough. And then if you get out, there's nothing there. This is what I keep hearing everywhere I go. So that tells me we need to shine a light on this. And number one, take the stigma out of it so that people can freely get treatment and assist people so that they can get treatment. Number two, we need to embrace any or all ideas out there in and around treatment. And number three, we got to point out the fact that we need additional resources if we're going to properly treat people. We got to acknowledge that in a real way. So what I want to do this afternoon is hear from you. Stephanie Foner, who works with me, is going to be taking notes. I want to hear what is happening here. I want to hear your thinking around what needs to happen as far as treatment from a state perspective. What do we need to be doing? And I want to hear what you think I should be doing if I become your governor. I'm going to be, in the next month or two, putting out a detailed proposal around how we're going to deal and treat people with opioid addiction for real in this state. So I want to get your ideas. I want to get your thinking so that when I put this out, it reflects what's happening on the ground in communities and people's thinking in communities across the state. So that's why I'm here. I want to listen. I want to hear from you. And I hope to get to a discussion this afternoon, and I'm hopeful that we can accomplish something in shining a light on this. I'm hopeful about it. People talk about the cost of treatment. And the last thing I want to say before I open up this discussion, people talk about the cost of treatment. In addition to the human toll, this epidemic is costing the state of Massachusetts $10 billion annually. Criminal justice costs, health costs, productivity. $10 billion annually. So we got to be honest about what it's going to take to ensure our fellow human beings have what they need in their families. And we step up and we make that investment. So with that, I'm going to open it up. And feel free to, I think we've got microphones. I don't know if we need sound. People can hear me pretty well, right?
Perfect.
So let's open it up for comments. I want to hear your thinking, please. Yes, sir.
Hi, Setti, Paul attendant. Hi, Jim.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. I think, first of all, there's no one cure-all fits all, and everybody's cure has to be tailored to that person. And it's not cheap. The resources, like you said, will be enormous. I think we could go a long way toward getting those resources. We have legislation tying individual people to the pharmacy company who first prescribed them that got them hooked, and make that pharmacy company responsible for their cost ad infinitum, not just a $10,000 fine or anything, but pay for that person's cure. First of all, it would they'd certainly limit the number of people they were prescribing drugs to in the future. It would cut that back dramatically. And I know it's not easy legislation. I know it's, but it's an idea. I don't see any other way of coming up with the amount of resources we need to cure the number of people we have with this.
Well, We know, and I know, there are pharmaceutical companies that purposely sold addictive drugs to people, knowing they were going to become addicts. We know that. And we know that there are people that funded these pharmaceutical companies, and we know that these weren't just doctors prescribing. There were pain clinics that were set up all over the country where these pharmaceuticals were selling this medicine, purposely, knowing. So there is no question. We need to hold them accountable. That is a great way of holding them accountable. I've heard this in every city and town I've been to in the state so far, having this conversation. I do believe there should be some accountability, and I do believe we should perhaps make them pay for treatment. But one thing on the payment, and I just want to say this to all of you. Yes, this is a lot of money, but I got to tell you, there are a lot of people and corporations at this moment in our state that are doing really well. And a lot of them are in and around where I live, the greater Boston area. And a lot of them are residents of the city I live in. We ought to ask them to pay more. We ought to ask them to contribute more so that we can invest in treating people. I'm a believer in that. We got to be honest. We got to ask people, or we got people that are doing really well. We got to ask them to pay more. That's what I believe, in addition to the pharmaceutical companies. So it's a great point. Yes?
Yeah. My name is Robert Bergen. My wife and I experienced our son died April of this past year. 2 weeks out of jail, okay? And I'm a veteran, and to see the money that the jails receive for helping people to get off of opioids, they should have a better program. And what I mean is, a guy, okay, for instance, a person steals, they get locked up, they get put in jail. They find out this guy has an opiate addiction, okay? While he's in jail, there's nothing done about his opiate addiction. So what they do is, they do the little time they do, then they come out. They come out and they try to get back into the program, into the system, into something that's going to keep them from doing it. But there's so many other things out there that prevent them from doing it. My son, that came out, he was doing good for 2 weeks, okay? And he ended up getting with the wrong person, and he OD'd, okay? Now, the whole time he was in there, I kept telling him, see if you can get, it's a drug that they have that can stop you from using the opiate. Or if you could take it while you're in jail to prepare you for when you get out, then if you try to use it, it won't have any effect. But I feel like the system is not working hard enough to keep these people from coming back out of jail, using again, and end up ODing. A lot of these guys or kids, because it's mostly kids, they come out and they think they can pick up where they left off and using the drugs. And it's impossible, okay? Because your system changes, you're not using, and then you come out and you have to deal with fentanyl or whatever the case is out there. So what I don't understand is that the money is there. They keep saying that they're funding, but where's the funding going? It's not going to the right place. Is it going to the administrators? Because I always see administrators making good money, but I don't see it trickling down to the person that's using. And this is what we have to do. We have to find a way to spread that money out to actually help people instead of making them believe there's help. And this guy comes out of jail thinking he's got help, and there's nothing there for him. And then what does he do? He gets to a point of frustration. I can't get nothing done. I can't get my license. I can't do this. I can't work. So he's got all these different things coming at him. So the best way that he remembers on how to get rid of these things is to use. And I used to be an addict, not a heroin addict, but I was an addict. I met you up at Soldier On in Pittsfield years ago. And I was homeless and I was an addict. And a program that they have up there turned me around. Okay, I've been living here in New Bedford for 6 years. I've been married for 2 years. I haven't used drugs in almost 8 years, okay? And the thing is, Not to say that the VA was better, but they provided an outlet for you to talk to somebody, get help. And that's not going on around here. Because you see a meeting like this, where this place should be overwhelmed with people, because the epidemic is so bad in this city. And I mean, I live on a main street and I see it all day, every day. I see homeless people out there. I used to work over at the library. I see guys sitting on the step all day, you know, and they're using, well, what can you tell them? Go. I can't tell them to go anywhere because there's nowhere for them to go. And that's the problem that we have. We have a lot of volunteers, we have a lot of people throwing things at it, but they're not throwing the right things. Thank you.
First of all, I'm so sorry for your loss, the loss of your son. I'm so sorry. Second, thank you for your service to our country. Third, thank you for being here and telling your story. You talked about, and you and I met each other at Soldier On in Pittsfield. You spoke about what happened to you. I want to know what happened to you there that enabled you to be here. Can you talk about what you experienced at Soldier On a little bit more?
Sure.
Because part of what we've got to do, and you made this point, it's not just offering a hand or putting resources, it's making sure we're putting the right programs in place for people.
Right.
So can you share a little bit more about what happened so that we can learn from it?
Well, at Soldier On, there was a veterans program for homeless veterans in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And they took an old nursing home, actually, and turned it into a homeless shelter. And what they did was they put the people who moved in, the homeless people, they put them in charge of it, as far as like a board. So I was on the board, and what we would do is basically, we bring a person in, and we work with that person. We set him up with an individual counselor, so that if he had a problem, he could go talk to the counselor. We made sure he had all the necessities, healthcare, ID card, a driver's license, just things that they hadn't had in years. And just to get these things back one at a time, it's an accomplishment. And it gives you sort of a goal. The place built housing right next to it in Pittsfield, up on the hill. And the way that they did it was 30% of any money that you received, they would save it for you. And in saving it, then they would give you one of the places and only charge you 30%. Now, it's an investment. So once you leave, you get on your feet and leave, well, actually, you're selling your place. And you get that money to start your life again. And we had guys who were opiate users, we had alcoholics, we had crack addicts, we had child molesters. We had all kind of people in the community, and we worked together to make sure everybody succeeded, regardless where they came from, what they did, and it worked because I left Philadelphia and came here. I came to Pittsfield, and I came here with a feeling of defeat because I don't know, it's something about Massachusetts and the veterans programs here are so much better than anywhere else in the country because they want to help you. And if you have the opportunity to get help, take it. And you think that, well, they're going to be like the rest, but they're not. Because they actually, they give you. You have to really mess up bad not to get it, But it was the point of living around all these people who were just like you. And then what's happening is you're going out into society, and instead of people looking down on you, they say, hey, this guy's trying. So we're going to give him an opportunity to see what else he can do. And what astounded me the most about it, there was so many different things that so many different veterans could do that could help the community. I mean, we would go fix a fence for somebody, and we had a guy who was a carpenter. You had a guy who was a manager on a construction site. These guys knew what to do. Went in, got it done. Came out, no charge. And it was a way of giving back. And when I left there, I went to Northampton, VA. And I ended up working for the VA hospital as a psychiatric nurse.
Wow.
So, and I mean, they trained me, they sent me to school, they did everything. And it was like,
Put you on the path.
hey, put me on a path for success. And it's the same thing that can happen in the community, but the community has to work with it. They have to be able to open their arms and say, hey, regardless of what this guy did, we gotta give him another chance. Because there's a lot of addicts out there that just need a chance. Because they know they messed up. They just wanna be like, okay, all right, I know I messed up, can you give me an opportunity? I'll show you that I can do it. And they'll do it. But the thing is, a lot of times is the word money comes into a factor. The guy who ran Soldier On, I forget his name.
Jack Downing.
Jack Downing, right? His brother is a U.S. Not a U.S. senator, but a state senator. Or
His nephew was a state senator, Ben.
Right, and they went out and they got grants. They went to Washington and fought and brought things. They have a new development at Northampton where they build houses for single families that the veterans who messed up. They got a house now. They can bring their son and their wife in there, and they have a place to live. And it's just like getting the opportunity to get on your feet and walk with your head up. Because, like we served, okay?
Yeah.
And when we came home, we didn't ask for nothing. All we asked is to give us a job. I mean, the Vietnam veterans were luckier than the new veterans because they sent Vietnam veterans straight to school. These veterans, they don't get that unless you sign up for it. You don't get that school. So a lot of them come out and they're like, well, I can't do infantry in a regular job. So what do they have? So it's about the state retraining and getting these people together. But Soldier On was a great experience for me. And I would recommend it for anybody, even if you have a family who has opiate problems who have been in the military, go to the VA, because they have the best, where they help you. They got everything we have out here, but the only thing they have is they have more support, because there's veterans working with veterans, and they know what it's like to go through those things.
Thank you for sharing your story. And imagine if we had leadership that would invest and replicate
Right.
Soldier On and programs like that for veterans and non-veterans.
Right. Yeah.
So this is what this conversation is about. The second thing, and then I want to move on, I want to just touch on that I have been hearing, is getting people ready for reentry. When they're incarcerated, I've had conversations with people who are incarcerated, who tell me they're about to reenter, but they need to be ready to reenter. This is a criminal justice reform question, because we got to make sure that people are getting real treatment for addiction. When they get out, they are connected to a job. They're connected to housing, transportation. There's an organization called UTEC up in Lowell, which goes into jails and works with people before they reenter. And then when they reenter, they make sure they have a job right away. They actually have jobs. And they get the treatment that they need and make sure they have housing, so that you don't have scenarios where things happen that are not good, that you
They
mentioned.
end up doing the same thing.
So, exactly. So thank you for sharing your story. Yes.
How you doing, Mr. Warren? My name is James. Speaking about resources and how to allocate them, there's a tool in Massachusetts that families can use if their loved ones are addicts or are a danger to themselves. It's called a section. No problem. It's called a Section 35. You go to court. You swear to the judge that my loved one is a danger to himself or the community, and then the judge, can civilly commit you for up to 90 days. Now, you can go to private treatment centers, but a lot of people go to, state prison. And so, do you think it's a proper allocation of state resources to send addicts to prison with little to no, services in there? And it's a question. I know you read about Massac and the conditions there, and I was just wondering your opinion on whether or not we should actually, lock up addicts.
We need diversion out of the criminal
Without a
justice
doubt.
system, out of jail.
That's what I wanted.
We need to make sure that this is, before even people, there are people that, this is my opinion, that should not be locked up. What they need is treatment. So we need to, before they even enter, we need to divert people who need treatment. The Middlesex Court has a court that does this. We need to make sure the court system is adjusting. The other thing, folks, we gotta do is these mandatory minimums for nonviolent drug offenses. Mandatory minimums do not work. They do not work. It's evidence-based. This isn't me talking. They don't reduce crime, and mandatory minimums do not reduce addiction. So back to the criminal justice question, yeah, if people get in criminal justice, they get in jail, we need to have treatment. We got to make sure we are diverting them, as opposed to superimposing these mandatory minimums, which does not give a court the opportunity to divert. So I think we need, this is more criminal justice reform that needs to happen. So I'm glad you brought that up. Yes.
Oh, I wish I knew more about this, but I know in other states, they actually have in the correction, like 2-year programs where they divert people who are, I guess, motivated. But the main thing with that is when I look at, I'm in addiction treatment, people come out and the same thing comes over and over and over again. They don't have a path, they don't have skills, they don't have anything that they need. And when I saw this other program, I'm like, wow, because we know that addiction takes 2 years to reach homeostasis. So we're throwing kids out there like after 30 days with basically nothing. Like the odds are against them.
Yep.
And I, like you was saying, even though I don't think sectioning is actually putting someone in jail, but why don't we have better, we need those better programs. And I don't know, it's like such a big thing, how we would start, but I'm kind of like other states, a lot of other states have these.
What other states have?
I wish I knew. Like
know?
I said, I didn't pull in.
Or which ones we should talk to you? If you see some states that are doing this successfully, that are doing it, are more advanced than we are, I'd like to know.
Yeah, exactly, because I think Massachusetts is actually really great. I mean, as bad as it is, I think we're doing a lot more than a lot of other states. So it seems to me like something like that could be put in place in terms of where our passion is. But,
Right? No,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yes.
I'm a grateful addict in recovery here in New Bedford. And I see addiction every day in the city. And it starts with our homeless people. That's where it's ultimately starting with. These people are displaced because of their addiction, because they have no services. There's no hope for some of these people. I see some addicts going into hospitals, being turned away from the hospitals. I frequently try to go out a couple times out of the week to round up people to try to get them to go into rehabs. I'm finding that I'm
Just by yourself?
Just by myself on my own strength. And that's what I have to do to get back in my recovery. I'm finding that a lot of these places are turning them away because A, there's no beds. They can't get transportation to certain places. So I think within the city that if we attack the homelessness at first, it'll lower the crime rate, the prostitution rate, the drug rate, the opioid overdose rate. Homelessness is very serious in the city. And mental health plays a figure in itself and alone. There's not enough mental health services out here for them. People are getting arrested for sleeping in doorways, for sleeping in hallways, in buildings. There's people, as you can see, you're driving down up over here in the main part of the city, there's tons of people out there begging for dollars and dimes. And we need to find resources for these people. There is a shelter down in the south end that is now a dry shelter. Okay, so what about these people that are addicted, that are using drugs and alcohol? They don't have a right to sleep in a warm place at night because of their addiction. So we need to somehow come together as a community to attack the homelessness here in New Bedford. And I think by attacking that first off, that would be a great help to this opioid crisis. Some of them are going out there and using opiates because they got nothing to rely on. No services, no family, no friends, not even somebody from the community just to say, hi, good morning, how are you? You know, it takes that one simple, how are you and how are you feeling today? To maybe turn somebody's lives around. So I think that's the first thing that we need to gather up, you know. We need to speak with the hospitals, we need to speak with the police departments, and find out how they would be able to resource this community and be able to help this community instead of hurting this community. You got some nurses that are turning people away from the hospital because they don't want to hold them for 2 or 3 days because they've seen them there too much.
Well, that's because of the law.
Or because they've held them at the hospital for too many
That's
times.
because of the law.
You know, and that all needs to change, you know.
I mean, you look at the mental health in this country and how mental health is put on the back burner versus anything else. This was done by Reagan years ago. And now we're suffering from it because there's more people that's been thrown out of mental institutions on the street. They're homeless, okay? Because, like you say, you can only get 3 days in the hospital.
Exactly.
And then once they decide that, well, that person is well enough to go back outside, okay, in society. And then that same person kills a person 2 weeks later, and they say, well, why'd you let him out? Well, we thought he was okay. But the law tells them that they can only be in there so amount of time, and we're not paying for them anymore. So that's the problem we have with the homelessness. The law has to change. And the law won't change until the people start to make noise. I mean, I grew up in a country that said, all right, that we the people, we are supposed to be running the country. We don't run this country, okay? The politicians run the country, and we say, yeah. We go along with it instead of standing up and doing something about it.
I want to just ask you a couple of questions. You were talking, you said to me, the homeless issue is what we have to attack. And you just described how you personally are going out there trying to round people up. But then you also talked about all these other components, mental health, services that people need, addiction treatment services that people need, but you talked about the homelessness. In your mind, what do you think, when we think about solutions, what would you want to see? In concrete terms, what would you want to see happen?
I'd like to see, first of all, the shelters change into a wet shelter and allow these people with addictions to come in. Make a structuralized programming for them. As far as drugs, alcohol awareness, recovery awareness. I'd like to see them engage more with different substance abuse programs like PACA, High Point, Seven Hills. Maybe have some groups going, maybe have some people come in, make it a more structuralized environment for these people. Allow them to get up back onto their feet, allow them to be productive members in society, help them out of this rut that they're going through. Because ultimately, the dope man that's selling is normally selling to a homeless person. And they're getting money off taxpayers. They're getting money by standing on the side of the roads. Now, when you bring these people into the community and you just kind of let them run rampantly and not care and not have a visualization for these people because they are less than or they have less than, it makes these people go out and commit crimes, do such things as prostitution and rob houses, be defiant. So I think it all starts within the Sister Rose's shelter, to be able to help and assist these people, get more of a programming going. And there's a wise saying that's in recovery: if you can't help an addict, don't hurt one. And that's what usually happens here in this city, is they're demised. So they don't, 9 times out of 10, they don't want to go for help because they don't want to be faced with a dignity issue or a respect issue. And it's hard asking for help. I'll be honest with you, I was in the same position myself. And it was very hard asking for help. But there was that one person that kind of said, hey, let's look at this a different way, Let's go out to coffee, let's figure out a different route, So we need more of that within the community. Like, if you see them out asking for $1, absolutely not. Go up to the store, buy them a cheeseburger, come back, So that's all basically what I'm stating is the care factor for the homeless should be more than what they're receiving at this point.
Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for
Thank you.
your courage and intellect around this. I have to tell you, folks, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Kia.
Kia. I've been to Cambridge, Springfield, Lowell, Norwell, Amherst, here. And what you just said to me is exactly what I'm hearing everywhere. I'm hearing there are not enough beds. I'm hearing that there's only one kind of shelter there that's either dry or someone else, we heard in Springfield a couple weeks ago, there's a wet shelter, but then you have to be using in order to get in. This is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
Because there's just not enough room anywhere. I'm hearing people who, again, feel stigmatized, feel like they can come forward, or their families. This is what I'm hearing all over the state. I'm just telling you. This is where I think about what people have told me we need, and you said it, and so did you, Paul, community-based, lifelong wraparound services, with housing included.
Yes.
With housing included. We were in Springfield a couple of weeks ago, and there was a woman who was trying to build 14 beds, housing, with wraparound services within it, with her little nonprofit. She can get the money for it. She applied for the state, couldn't get the money for it. Couldn't get the money for it. Now, 14 beds for women, those numbers are, 14 beds, you're not even close.
Yeah.
So we have people, Kia, you're mentioning what needs to happen. I'm hearing all these things that we could be doing, but we need resources to do it. That's what I keep hearing. Thank you for mentioning, for giving me your thinking around it. Yes.
My name's Jennifer, and I work at a psychiatric hospital in Dartmouth. We have 120 beds. 3 of our units are adult, and I can speak to this. A lot of our folks come in co-occurring. The average length of stay is 7 to 9 days. It takes 2 weeks to get into a step down. So a lot of these people are leaving, nowhere to go. And when you get the okay, well, they have a co-occurring. Their depression's too significant. Their anxiety's too much. We can't handle that. So it's not just a matter of programs, but understanding it's not just addiction and it's not just mental health. It's the co-occurring piece. So we
What
struggle.
does co-occurring mean?
Somebody who struggles with a mental health diagnosis, but also an addiction. There's a lot of programs where it's just, well, we only deal with mental health, or we only deal with addiction. But I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 people who struggle with addiction have a mental health diagnosis.
That's a great point. The other thing I've heard that isn't directly related to that is that we need additional clinicians and people who are trained appropriately to not only diagnose but treat. I hear it's not just about the number of beds per se, it's about the staffing. We just don't have enough people as well. Is that something that, I've heard that in multiple communities I've been to so far. Is that something that
We have a problem with prescribers who do not take mass health. I work in Plymouth in mental health and addiction, and we have a hard time finding people to even though they have mass health, like finding psychiatrists to take them, because there's just not enough.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I hate to say it, but they don't want to take mass health because it's a long, arduous process to
We heard
get
this in
payment.
Springfield. We heard this exact thing in Springfield a couple of weeks ago about how difficult and bureaucratic mass health is. Are people?
Yes.
I hear this. I'm hearing. This is the second time.
I think this is the appropriate time for me to speak. My name is Marga. I'm a family doctor.
Yep.
So a couple of points, sir. On that piece about the difficulties of insurance. So I'm a family doctor. I'm not an
Yeah.
addiction specialist.
Yep.
So insurance gives a more arduous time or difficult time for people like me who are not addiction specialists to practice Suboxone. So what's this? How can we pay our administrators? How can we pay our electricity bill as doctors? So I actually tried to apply. I was doing her route, like let me do what I can do on my own. Start a practice. I called for a bank loan, and they said, if you start a primary care practice, we'll help you, but we have nothing for addiction. And I had to pause, and I said, I'm sorry. There's an opioid epidemic, and you're telling me that you don't have a practice loan for a doctor to open an addiction. So this is something that I really would like to be impacted. And there's a mass medical society that if you post something there that says that there are pilot grants for people like me, and I'm a mid-career doctor. Mid-career means I'm 5 years out. I also am the president of the Philippine Medical Association. I don't think my colleagues who are in their senior years would be interested in this field, but you can impact young physicians like myself to enter into this before they get so jaded about everything else in medicine. And if I feel like the second point I wanted to make was I think the government should put more pressure on physicians, and it's not work that's for everyone, but there has to be some enlightening point that we are part of this community rather than to look away from it. And that's been a process for me, because as we all know, addiction is not an easy field to get into. What really convinced me was that I started shaking the hands of people with children, and how Suboxone, I'm a Suboxone prescriber, has changed their lives. So that's a process, but everybody needs to step into that process. And I tried to talk to my physician colleagues about this, and it's not easy. It's just easier not to practice it. But I think there is laws that will mandate them to that, but I think it's still gonna be more of a push and a shove. And seeing someone as important as you talk about this, let's say to the Mass Medical Society, might put some more pressure to more people that are getting into the Suboxone. Have Mass Medical Society open like quarterly Suboxone trainings. Because right now, I only see UMass do it and Boston University. So if it's an epidemic, let's act like it's an epidemic, right? So the third point is, so the grants, posting of grants, I told you about my problem about a practice loan. I fortunately found other ways to open practice, and promoting more addiction specialists like we've all recognized, and then probably a conference where we could get all the people together who are interested so that you could publicize all the resources in that conference. Like, again, act like an epidemic. So thank you.
Sharon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate both of you. Kia and Doctor, I appreciate you just taking it on and not just sitting back. Thank you for that. Look, one thing I'm just going to say on this, because, and then I'll take some more, I want to hear some more comments. And this has happened, this is my 8th visit. Inevitably, this turns to healthcare and our system, and how there are disparate pieces of it. It's not connected, and it's not based on the health outcomes of people. It's based on number of visits, rules and regulations that may or may not make sense based on an insurance company's bottom line, a lot of times. Look, here's my view on this. I'm just going to tell you, I believe very strongly that we need to put in place a single-payer healthcare system in our state now.
Yes.
Because we've got it. And the reason for this is we're the second highest, most expensive state in the country as far as healthcare costs. I'm listening to this. You've got all these different pieces out there of healthcare based on, as I said, number of visits, insurance companies' bottom line. Our healthcare system needs to be based on the health outcomes for people. If people are in recovery or they're struggling with addiction, let's make sure they have treatment. And let's make sure they have the right kind of treatment that's suited for them. Right, Paul? We talked about this, you mentioned this. Because everyone comes from this from a different experience. Everyone comes from this from a different place. It's not one size fits all. You started the conversation that way, right? It's not one size. So we need to have a healthcare system that's based on that. And the reduction of costs need to happen, I believe, in just reduction of administrative costs, insurance companies, and prescription drugs. So that's what I believe, and I'm hearing it everywhere in regard to this discussion around addiction. We got to make sure that we let me take, sir, I'm just going to take a couple more folks that haven't talked. I'll come back. Please.
My name is Linda Waxler. My son Jonathan died 20 years ago from a heroin overdose.
Sorry.
So we've been in this for a long time. We've learned a lot more about it than we ever would have wanted to. And I just want to make a couple of points. One of them is the medical field, that we had found has never been interested in learning about addiction. When we first found out about Jonathan's addiction, he had graduated with a master's degree. We just learned about his addiction. He was living two lives. We took him to a hospital because he had infections in his arms. A psychiatrist came up to him, he was lying in bed, and said, "Don't you know this is bad for you?" And at that time he told us that the first time he used heroin is the first time he felt normal. And I said to him, I had no idea that he ever didn't feel normal. So my take on this, and over the 20 years that we've been researching this and writing about this and talking to many, many people across the country about this, is that when I look back at Jonathan, from the time he was born, is his personality was very different than many other children, and that from the day he was born, he never stopped moving. He had no fear. He would try everything. And I'm sure many other parents who we've talked to said the same thing about their children that ended up being addicted. And we thought that was just an absolutely wonderful thing, and the other parents are saying the same kind of thing. Jonathan would have tried anything, and he did. From the time he was 13, we found out he was smoking pot. The whole thing now with the OxyContin and the pills, now obviously the kids are trying them, but one time is all they need. And if they can't get any more of those pills, they're going to go straight to heroin. And people don't quite understand that. I think that most people think that these kids are all taking the pills and don't understand that they can have heroin delivered to their houses. They can call a number and that heroin can be delivered to their houses. They don't have to get it on the street. They don't have to find the person that's selling it on the street corner. They can get it anywhere. They can go buy it in a store. They can get heroin laced with fentanyl anywhere. And they can get it in the schools, and they can get it in elementary schools. So people don't quite understand the extent of this. And the amazing thing is that people still think that it's not going to happen in their families. And I can guarantee you that there's not a family that is not somehow affected by this. And yet people still say to me, that it wouldn't happen in their family, which is just amazing. I mean, I can laugh it off now. It used to be that I was embarrassed, I didn't want anybody to know, and everybody now knows. So I don't think treatment works. I think that the great majority of people that are taking heroin, especially now because of the fentanyl, because people don't know what they're getting when they're getting the heroin, that the great majority of the people, unfortunately, are going to die. I think that the only thing that's going to work is the brain research, is finding out what's going on in their brains and how we can. I was a teacher. I could tell you those kids that were going to be at risk. And it wasn't the kids that were bad in school. It wasn't the kids that were causing trouble. It was the quiet ones. It was the kids that were planning what they were going to do when they were going to get out of school. It was the kids that were starting with drugs and alcohol when they were 11 years old. And that was the kids that the first time they were using, it was getting to them. And those were the kids. And I could point them out. I could point that kid out. And I would talk to the kids in my classes, and I was going to say, all of you can try, and just one of you might be getting stuck, because they were all going to experiment, and one kid was going to get stuck. So it's going to be the brain research. A couple of years ago, we talked to the doctor that was the head of addiction research at the NIH, and that's what he said. He said it's going to be the brain research that's going to solve this. But right now, we don't have that. And when the doctors are going to, they have to be involved. And when, we've been in emergency rooms lately, unfortunately, several times. And the addicts are coming in and they're all being put around in the emergency rooms on the outside, around the rooms. It is so, it's so just horrible for them to be just, like everybody's walking around and looking at them, and it's just demeaning. It's awful. And they're never given a room. They're just, it's like they're not even a person. And, it's just horrible. And and the doctors are just not interested. So I think that's one of the first things. They need to be trained, and they need to understand that these are human beings, that this is a disease. And I really have to hand it to you that you're doing this and that you're understanding that these are human beings with a disease. And, that the stigma has got to go away. And my son was a wonderful person, and people have to, and your son too. And, that they had a disease, and their brains just told them, go out there and try everything and do everything.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. I would be afraid. They weren't. So that's what we have to understand.
Thank you for sharing your story. And I'm sorry about your son.
Thank you.
Look, just a few things, and I'm just hearing so many stories from people all over the state about this. Number one, we know that this is a biological, addiction is biological. We know that, and you pointed that out. We know evidence-based that certain people's biological makeup, if you try it one time, you become an addict. Other people, because of their biological makeup, you try it one time, and maybe they don't do it again. We know that. And the second piece to this, to your point, we have got to take the stigma out of this. Because if we know it's biologically driven, then we shouldn't be saying someone's a bad person because they're addicted. So this is where you just said it. Out of your mouth. The good kids, the bad kids. To your point, there's no good kids, bad kids. There are kids that have a biological makeup, and they become addicted because of that biological makeup. We have to also shine a light on that, because part of this in getting your doctors to treat and getting the best ideas around treatment ensconced in helping people in our healthcare system this taking away the stigma has to be a part of it. And people need to be able to come out and get treated. Because people that even sometimes want to, and I've talked to people who are addicted, they don't want to reveal. They don't want to, because it's, for them, it's not something that they're proud of, they're ashamed of. And the same thing for family members. We all know people. We all know people. So I think that this has got to be a part of this conversation as well. And then when I think about this healthcare system that we have, and I think about it being driven by health outcomes for people, and you keep talking about bringing in the latest research around brain development, that is also a part of creating a single payer system. It's about focusing on outcomes for people. What is the best research that we know about the brain and treating people? We should be bringing those in and making them accessible and affordable for people. That's the kind of system that we want to have in place. So thank you for telling you, sharing your story. I will call you. I saw that this gentleman in the back had his hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do some counseling as a minister with different people who are on drugs and different things. And I've had my own bouts with it I was in the Marine Corps back in the Vietnam days. And, I'm already in my late 60s, so I've been through enough to know what other people kind of go through. And the thing is that when I see the attempt at fixing it, a lot of very good things are being done, but it seems to me, and from my own experience as well as listening to others, that we try to fix it, we try to fix everything with a hammer. You know, like you said, it's a biological thing. For many of us, anyway, it was a matter of simply a paradigm that we hadn't been exposed to a different way of looking at things. That was it. We just hadn't been exposed to it. It hadn't occurred to us. And so we went merrily on our ignorant ways and sought relief in whatever in the ways that we knew and understood. But what I try to help the recovery world see is that like you said, one size doesn't fit all. You know, to see the holistic approach to this kind of a thing. And I've seen people, if people are addicts, doesn't mean that they're dummies. You know, they walk in, they see a bunch of people talking about recovery in their eyes and walk right out. And why is that? And you see that they wish that when they come into a recovery atmosphere, that there would be some actual people on site. For an addict who doesn't have a home, a car, or whatever, it's a whole day affair just to go chase an apartment, try to find a job. Not to mention that they're still paying for some crime that they committed ages ago, some minor thing that now deprives them of work, school, you know, housing, and a bunch of other things. You know, they're paying again and again and again and again. They never get off that merry-go-round. And so, you know, what I would like to see at some point is a holistic approach where you have actually people on site that would facilitate for the people who are addicted, you know, the ability to get out and, you know, find how they're going to get help with housing. They're going to get help with school. Some of these kids, they want to get off drugs, but they don't want to end up in a factory. They want to try to move up. They're smart kids, and they know they're smart, that they can do better. And if there was somebody there that would help, like with assistance, Pell Grants or whatever is out there nowadays, you know, to help them get to school, they would love it, but again, on site. So, you know, they don't have to spend the whole day on each and every aspect of it. And when they have that addiction problem, one of the things that affects is memory. It's very difficult to all of a sudden get an agenda, keep a schedule. It's very, very difficult. So on site and a holistic approach, you know, to treating addiction would go a long way, because honestly, for some people, it's just, and I've seen this again, it's just offering a new paradigm, and how that is so powerful in affecting a change in them and strengthening their will and desire to kick, you know, and start a new life. You have to see it to believe it. You know, it's miraculous. It's just, you can't call it anything else. That together with the biological component, because that is for people, that's what it is. You know, but somehow find a way to work this together in a package and put it on site. You know, now you've got the bigger problem that I can't even begin to address. I have no clue. Is how to get away from these guys who somehow convinced America that they were working out, they were looking out for the working poor guy, when all along it was about, you know, constitutional, and America meant the top 1%. You know? America didn't mean me and a bunch of other working sticks. You know? We weren't real Americans. You know? We were the Klingons. So I mean, and more and more people are realizing that. You know. So where the money's going to come from, I don't know, because it's all being stolen. But you know, off the working backs of you know, the people who did all the labor. But you know, once again, we're going to be grateful to one another for what, you know, the investors as well as the working man, you know, get together and appreciate one another's efforts and help one another. That's that's the hard part, you know. But again, once we get the programs going, I would love to see, like I said, and I'll leave it there, a holistic approach where you have ministers, you have psychologists, psychiatrists, what all the different aspects, attack it from all the different aspects. Housing, if a person sees, I'm going to get off drugs, and then what? They're homeless, I'm going to track. If they see that help there, it goes a long way in encouraging them to keep coming.
Thank you for your service in the Marines. I'm a sailor myself, veteran of the Iraq War, so thank you for that. I heard and we hear I've heard from every place we go to, community-based, comprehensive wraparound services, including families, not just the person that's addicted in recovery, including housing. And I'm hearing that from you, elements of that community coming together. One other thing you mentioned that came up in Cambridge, there was a mother who stood up and talked about her son who was addicted, who's in recovery, that's now in the state college system. And one of the things she said was, we need to have these wraparound services at the state college level and the college level as well. I also happen to believe, by the way, that we should have free public college, lifelong, just like high school, with apprenticeships and internships. There's people who are, anyone at this moment, has to take on huge amounts of debt. And most people can't even finish. If you want to go back to school, you can't do it and work. It's impossible. So I think there is something to also having these types of wraparound services available at the state and community college level. I think that's a really good point. You had a good point you wanted to make. Thank you for that.
Well, I want to bring up the issue of education for teachers. And as you were talking about brain-based research, which is not new, but most teachers don't seem to have any idea of some of the things that they're seeing every day with their students that might put those students at risk.
Right.
And at hearing testimonials, which is what it really is here, hearing people talk about what it looks like up close and the terrible losses that shatter people's lives makes the biggest impact on college-based teachers. When I've been teaching teachers, the thing that has the biggest impact when I was talking about normalization for special needs is having parents come in and talk about what works and what doesn't work in the public schools. The same should be happening around addiction issues, students that may already have signs of either withdrawal or hyperactivity, and how that relates to a lot of this later at-risk behavior.
And so many of the schools deny that there's a problem. And that's a real problem, because so many schools say, not in our school, no problem here.
I think you're right, and I think you're correct. What I'm also hearing across the state is schools being completely underfunded and not having the resources to meet the needs of our children coming in at any level. So I also believe we're going to have to be honest about that fact. In addition to giving teachers some training, right now the state has a requirement through this last legislation that there's some screening processes that need to take place. What the state hasn't done is provided the resources to treat people. Once you find out there are issues, and you get the screening. This is the world we live in. So I agree with you. I think we must, this is about having open, honest conversations about what the state and government is responsible for or not. And I am a believer that we're talking about our fellow human beings. We must step up. And you got the gentleman there in the Marine Corps, too. Who's going to pay for it? People that are doing really well. We got to ask them to pay more money in taxes.
Absolutely.
People making a lot of money, that's the American way. To reinvest that so we can provide the services I'm talking about to help our fellow human beings.
Well, the people in Norway, not to mention,
The ones who don't want to come here.
Yeah.
And so do the people in the other Scandinavian countries, and they're not looking to move to another country, but they pay a much
Just have
higher
to-
percentage.
I think we need to be honest about that
Yeah, I'm
conversation.
sorry, I
I
didn't
really
mean
do.
to-
No, thank you. Counselor, you gotta,
I'll just be 20 seconds.
Yep.
I substitute taught in New Bedford Public Schools for the last 3 years. My last time was December 2017, just a month or so ago. But I can't substitute teach anymore because I'm a city councilor, so you can't give out salaries. But I can tell you, in the school system, just I mean, what you talk about, you can see the kids who, they're the kids who we have mostly fathers in jail, sometimes a mother in jail, and you can just see how this whole addiction issue affects the kids in school. And I've taught at all 3 junior high schools here, Keith, New Mandan, and Roosevelt, and then on the high school level, New Bedford High School, but only not New Bedford High School, but Whaling City Junior Senior High School, which is an alternative school, Trinity Deus Academy, which is an alternative school. And I can tell you, those 2 schools, I mean, you can just see these kids that are there. You hear the conversations. I'll just, real quick, we were talking about civics, and we're reading the newspaper, and I said something about, no one's born wanting to put a needle in their arm. And this girl sitting next to me, she said to me, yeah, but when and right away I knew, I hit her nerve, right? She's almost someone that she knows. Mother, sister, someone, and you can just, and I see how this girl, I see what's going on, she's affected. I don't know that she's on drugs or anything like that, but her family is, and she's just, the poor girl's a wreck. So you see, and the teachers don't know how to handle it. I mean, I had to just stop right there and kind of divert it to something else. We were doing civics. I knew right away that I had unintentionally hit a chord, but I knew right away that there was a problem in her family or with a friend or something. And the teachers, like, how do you handle it?
I appreciate very much your comments around this, because as a person that was the mayor of a city where I had the 2nd highest number of millionaires in the state, but yet at the same time, 1 in 8 of my households in Newton live at or below the poverty level. That's economic inequality. And let me tell you, as an ex officio member of my school committee, I saw it with the kids. Here's the deal. The kids coming from wealthier households, right, had all the supports they needed to try to make sure their kids, early childhood, after school, all the access to therapists and interventions, right? It costs money to do that, right? It costs money. And then kids that do not have that wealth do not have that. So this is early on, and you see this gap in the same building. And you move out in and across the state, and you have cities that don't have strong tax bases, that can't raise the revenue on their own to invest in schools, and you don't have all these households. So this is the disparity, and you see it in and around Greater Boston. The further you move out, the resources just are gone. There's nothing there. I'm here. I've been in the South Coast. Been in Bedford. How many times I've been here? Been here many times. It's a great city. It's a great city. It's a great all-American city. Smart people, hardworking people. Just incredible place. The resources. Regardless, the resources are not here, and they're not coming from where they need to be coming from, Beacon Hill. I believe this. So, this is also the economic divide that there is when it comes to treatment as well, and I'm seeing it everywhere. And I appreciate your comments, Council. Yes.
So I'll try to make it short because we already talked a lot about teachers and their role. But I want to add on to the conversation about teachers because kids spend so much of their time with teachers. And I'm a teacher, and teachers are in that profession because they care so much. That's why we're there. If anybody cares about your kids more than you, it's the teachers. And recently, and I agree with it, we all got trained to be able to teach English language learners. So this is, in Massachusetts, we all had to, it doesn't matter if you have your master's degree, we were all thrown into a program because we need to be able to teach English language learners. The money, I didn't have to pay anything out of pocket to do that, just a requirement. This is an epidemic, like so many people have said. I mean, first of all, teachers would probably take these classes. They would probably just do it, just because they care and not for any money whatsoever. But if the funding can, exist for English language learners, and the funding can exist for teachers to be able to, to be educated on how to address this issue in schools. Kids don't spend a lot of time in health class anymore. I don't even know, in New Bedford, I don't know what the time in health class is. I know that at my school now in Taunton, they spend like no time in health class. It's, oh my goodness, it's not even a full semester of health class like in a year. It's just, it's absolutely ridiculous. But teachers could incorporate these issues into their curriculum. If we were taught, we could find ways to incorporate it into English, history, science, you name it. We can do it. We can address these issues. It's not like, this is what drugs are. This is what heroin is. It's not what I'm talking about. It's like incorporating mindfulness. How do you sit with very difficult feelings? How do you become resilient? How do you overcome trauma? All of these things can easily be incorporated into the curriculum. So if teachers were educated, and if there were policies put in place to protect teachers, because it's scary to bring up these sensitive topics in class, right? But if we had administrators saying, this is going to be our mission in school, we support you talking about these topics, we trained you so that you know how to talk about it. I mean, come on. We're with kids all the time. What the influence that we have, the impact we could have. I think that we need this type of training. Like I said, we did it with the teaching teachers how to teach English language learners. We can train teachers how to tackle this issue right here.
I really appreciate what you said. I have to tell you, I have a special affection for educators because of what you just said. They are the most important people in many different ways in children's lives, and we need to make sure that educators have the resources they need to get their kids prepared and get them ready after they go from one grade to another and then beyond. I would also add, and I agree with you, we do need those resources, but I also believe, and I've been saying this, that we need to include in public education not just the investment that you're talking about, but we need to add in public education after-school enrichment, summer enrichment, and early childhood. This needs to be universally part of public education in Massachusetts. Because, as I said, this is the divide. You have families that have a lot of money, that provide all these things, that provide all these interventions, that pay for all these things. And then you have people that are just trying to get by, that don't have these things. And so I believe we need to include those elements in addition to what you're saying if we're gonna address the opioid epidemic, the crisis here, as well as get our kids ready. I think that's another honest conversation I believe we need to have as a state.
I'm sorry, I think we have time for just one more.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just a story about your hometown. 40 years ago, my son was arrested at Newton North High School for selling pot, and was into the court, and he was given his choice to go to jail or go to a halfway house on Commonwealth Avenue. He wisely chose the latter. But that house was terrific, and he had to stay straight and clean, and he was in high school, and it got him through high school, and he went on to a successful life and never got back on drugs again. I don't know if that halfway house is still there, but it got him straightened out as a high school junior. So that kind of thing, and it had the right people there, and it brought the parents in to provide support and give the treatment and so forth. So I've seen that work. And
I'm glad you brought that up. I was talking about this earlier. Your son was diverted out of the criminal justice system because the program was in place.
That's right.
And the high school worked with the courts and the police department to divert your child. Now, we know that doesn't happen.
No.
That does not happen most of the time in this state. We know that.
Yeah.
And in fact, kid ends up in jail. They in the criminal justice system, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And you know the rest of the story.
yeah. Well, that's what's so fortunate.
So this is,
and it was
to
the
your
right
point.
people there to do it.
To your point, this is exactly why you've illustrated why this is a part of, the reform of criminal justice system and diversion. It should be a part of this conversation. You illustrated that, so thank you. So look, it sounds like I've got to go to Attleboro this evening.
Next.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all being here, taking the time to share your stories personally, to share your thinking about this crisis. It's allowed us to shine a light on it today. I think we've learned a lot that we're going to take with us as we produce the plan that I think needs to be robust and address the opioid crisis in the state of Massachusetts. And I want to end with this. There was this recurring theme in here. I truly believe at this moment, dealing with this crisis, we must not accept the status quo. We can no longer do that in this state. It's over embracing low expectations and the status quo. We must stand up and be honest about the fact this is going to cost money. It's going to cost money. We had an hour of session in here. Brilliant people in recovery, brilliant parents, brilliant doctors, all sharing their thinking around what these solutions are. We know in this state we have the best minds in thinking. We know. What we don't have is the resources to implement. So guess what? We got to ask people making $1 million a year, making a lot of money, to pay more in taxes. Right. And we got to do it now. Right. And stop the delay. This is part of it. So I don't care. You decide you support me or not. That's fine. I want you to support me, but if you don't, what I do want you to do is push any elected official at the state level to demand more resources right now. Right now. So thank you for being here. I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate your intellect. It's great to be with you. Thank you.